All right, today we're getting into the head of Arthur Schopenhauer, a philosopher whose name is pretty much synonymous with pessimism. But what's so fascinating is that his super bleak view of the world ended up being one of the most influential, shaping art, literature, and philosophy for generations to come.
So let's just jump right in with the big question, the one at the very heart of his whole philosophy. Is human desire a trap? You know that feeling, right? We're caught in this constant cycle of wanting something, then we get it, and almost immediately we start wanting something else. Is there ever any real, lasting satisfaction? Well, Schopenhauer had a very strong opinion on that. And his whole system kicks off with this one core idea, captured in one of his most famous quotes: "The world is my representation." Now that sounds kind of poetic, right? But for him, it wasn't just a nice phrase. It's the foundation for a pretty radical view of reality, suggesting that the world we see and touch every day isn't the real world at all. So you gotta wonder, where does all this doom and gloom come from? To really get Schopenhauer, we have to look at the man himself. His philosophy wasn't just dreamed up in an ivory tower. It was forged in a life that was frankly full of conflict and loneliness.
I mean, if you just look at his resume, the guy had it made. He was born into a rich family, he got to travel all over Europe, and he had this top-notch education, finishing his doctorate when he was only 25. By all accounts, he had every ingredient for a happy, successful life.
But all that wealth didn't exactly buy him a happy home. His childhood was really defined by friction, especially with his mother, Johanna. Now, she was a successful novelist herself, very ambitious, very social, and she just constantly clashed with her gloomy, critical son. And you can almost see the seeds of his whole pessimistic worldview being planted right there in those family fights.
Okay, so that worldview, he lays it all out in his masterpiece, The World as Will and Representation. Seriously, if you get this one book, you get him. His huge idea was to basically split reality in two.
First up is what he calls the will. And right away, we have to be clear. This has nothing to do with free will or you deciding what to have for lunch. For Schopenhauer, the will is the true reality under the surface of everything. It's this blind, cosmic, never-satisfied energy. Think of it as a constant, hungry force that makes a flower grow toward the sun, a lion hunt its prey, and makes you crave that new gadget or that next promotion. It can never be satisfied, and for Schopenhauer, that's where all our suffering comes from.
And then, on the other side, you've got representation. This is the world we actually live in, the world of sights, sounds, objects, and other people. But here's the catch. Schopenhauer says this is all just a projection, kind of an illusion that our minds create. It's like we're all walking around with these built-in VR goggles that show us the world in a specific way, but it's not the actual fundamental reality.
So let's put them side by side, because this is where it all clicks. You have the will, which is the hidden, singular, irrational force, the thing in itself. And then you have representation, the world of appearances that our minds slice and dice into all the separate things we see around us. And here's the kicker. Our suffering is born from that deep underlying will, but we only feel its sting through the world of representation.
Okay, so you'd think an idea this huge would make him an overnight sensation in the academic world, right? Nope, not even close. For most of his life, Schopenhauer was a total nobody, completely ignored. He was a philosophical outcast, basically shouting into the wind, because the whole scene was dominated by one other guy. And the guy hogging all the spotlight? That was Hegel. You could almost picture it like a philosophical heavyweight match for the 19th century. Hegel was the superstar. His whole philosophy was optimistic. He saw history as this rational, forward-moving progress, which everyone loved. Schopenhauer, on the other hand, saw life as fundamentally irrational and full of suffering, and he called Hegel's work nonsense. While the philosophical world picked its champion, and it wasn't Schopenhauer. And funny enough, his personal life looked a lot like his professional one, pretty isolated. He lived a solitary life in Frankfurt, living off a family inheritance. He never married, didn't have many friends, and was known for being, well, kind of grumpy. Super sharp wit, but a personality that could peel paint. His closest companions were his poodles, who he absolutely adored. Probably because he saw them as pure beings, free from the kind of torment the human will puts us through.
But here's the twist in the story. After decades of being ignored, the world finally caught up to Schopenhauer. That voice that was shouting into the wilderness, people started to listen, and his ideas just took off like wildfire.
But man, it was a slow burn. I mean, for almost 30 years, his masterpiece was basically collecting dust on a shelf. But then, around the 1850s, the mood started to shift. All that optimism from Hegel's era was beginning to feel a little hollow.
People were starting to look for a philosophy that spoke to the tougher, darker parts of life. And all of a sudden, Schopenhauer wasn't some cranky outsider, he was the guy who'd seen it all coming.
And once his work caught on, his influence was just massive, and it went way beyond philosophy. You've got huge names, composers like Richard Wagner, legendary writers like Leo Tolstoy and Thomas Mann, and of course, the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. They all drank deeply from Schopenhauer's ideas. He had totally changed how artists and thinkers looked at human nature, motivation, and suffering.
So, when you boil it all down, what was Schopenhauer's big legacy? He was the guy who held a mirror up to the 19th century and forced it to take a hard look at the uncomfortable truth of our endless irrational desires. He was the reality check, the necessary antidote to all that relentless optimism, offering a philosophy for anyone struggling in a world that doesn't always make sense.
And that kind of brings us full circle to one last thought. Schopenhauer believed that the only real, temporary break we could get from that relentless striving of the will was through art and music. For just a moment, when you're lost in a painting or a symphony, you can silence that inner voice that always wants more, and you can just be. So I'll leave you with this question. In our totally plugged-in, always-on, 21st century world, what's your escape? Where do you go to quiet that voice?